Tonight, a woman bitten by an eastern brown snake.
Police investigate a stolen car torched in Aikenvale.
4 people hospitalised after 2 separate crashes.
And Melbourne Cup preparations, they're in full swing.
This is 7 News with Joanne, Desmond and Nathan Spurling.
Good evening, thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
A Bowley Plains mother considers herself lucky after a shock encounter with a snake on Mount Louisa. Paramedics are warning there has been a spike in snake bites across the region and residents need to brush up on their first aid.
On Saturday, Lisa's morning walk up Mount Louisa took a nasty turn.
I had the headphones on and was just strutting up the hill, and then all of a sudden I was faced with probably a 1.5 to 2 metre, I'm going to say, huge snake on the step I was about to step on.
When she called out to warn women walking nearby, the snake struck.
Didn't feel the bite at the time. I think it all happened so quickly and then the adrenaline had kicked in.
After 24 hours in emergency, she was relieved it was a dry bite. There's been a spike in snake encounters across the region brought on by warmer weather.
As we hit the summer months now, we've seen as much as 86 to 89 calls.
Increasing from 20 000 calls back in July.
Townsville alone, we've had 4 calls in the last 7 days.
Including a 38-year-old man bitten on a property in Black River around 6:50 Sunday night.
If you do happen to get bitten, please don't wash the site where the bite has happened. We put a pad over it and then put the pressure bandage over it.
Queensland paramedics are advising people to enlist the help of a snake catcher to remove unwanted visitors.
And it's most commonly when they're trying to move a snake on or if they're trying to kill it themselves. Please leave it alone. That's the best thing that's going to happen for you and for the snake, and to get a local snake handler to come and move them away. Like
Ranger Dan from Hands On Wildlife.
Do not try and DIY your own snake problems. It's just not worth it.
Bethany Ross, 7 News.
A group of teens have taken to social media to post their dangerous antics in stolen cars across the city. A victim of crime is calling on offenders to have a bit of respect.
Taking to social media to brag about their latest theft.
Another day, another dollar.
This Kia Cerato was set alight in Aikenvale last night. The teen gang fled in another stolen car, spotted doing burnouts on Boundary Street this morning. Bronwyn Kidd's ute was taken from her Condon home while she slept on Thursday night.
It was just a shock, like my heart just sank. I just felt sick because I was asleep in the room next door while people had just come through, made themselves at home.
It was left abandoned on Palmerston Street after it was spiked by police on Friday when the group fled on foot.
It's quite heartbreaking to have someone else just flog it around for their own benefit and their own joy.
The 27-year-old says her home no longer feels like her safe place.
You just don't understand the impact it has on someone else's life. Like, you don't know what they're going through.
But she's not alone. QPS data shows there was more than 140 unlawful use of a motor vehicle offences in Townsville in the past month, along with 498 unlawful entries.
It's just ridiculous. Just have a bit of respect.
Chanel Macbeth, 7 News.
4 people have been taken to hospital following 2 crashes on Townsville roads yesterday. Police are investigating a crash in Kerwin around 2 p.m. after a motorbike collided with a Holden sedan at the intersection of Ross River Road and Bamford Lane.
Believe the rider has possibly broken arm and wrist.
2 people were taken to Townsville Hospital, the male motorcyclist with arm and groin injuries. Then just before 5 p.m, a high-speed car rollover at the intersection of Palmerston and Mooney Streets. 2 people were taken to hospital in a stable condition.
Regional Queensland has been the controversial hot topic of the LNP's first cabinet meeting. Senior ministers of the newly minted Crisafulli government sat down in Brisbane today, revealing hidden cost blowouts to some of the biggest projects.
They're freshly sworn in and ready to put months of promises into action.
This body has some important work to do over the next 4 years to give Queenslanders the fresh start they overwhelmingly voted for.
Youth crime and health and housing and cost of living, and that remains our focus.
Right up until the regions stole the show.
We can reveal today, through the detailed analytical report, that the actual cost, and with Treasury forecast, the actual costs of Labor's hydro hoax is over $36 billion.
That totals $15,653 per Queensland household.
Vowing to put forward a new roadmap of smaller pumped hydro stations spread out across Queensland, while the Deputy Premier revealed what he called the real reason behind delays to Kiwana's outdoor stadium ahead of an Olympic review.
And we're advised that the reason they didn't issue the tenders before the caretaker kicked in was because that one project is now tens of millions of dollars already over budget.
While 15 netball courts in Rockhampton got the go-ahead.
That's what Legacy is all about.
Within their first 100 days, they've also vowed to boost staffing at rural maternity services and reset youth behaviour in the regions.
Every time I went to rural and regional Queensland, they would be saying, this is all about Brisbane. It can't be. It's got to be about all of Queensland.
Danny Sharp, 7 News.
More than 700 people have helped raise $2,000 for Townsville Hospital's charity Brighter Lives. Big Four Ingenia Holiday Park hosted Parktacular with activities for the whole community.
Every entry to the Parktacular, whether that's through the day passes or through the accommodation, part of that will go back to Brighter Lives.
Brighter Lives has been fundraising for better regional health for 30 years.
There are calls for the Albanese government's student debt plan to go further and tackle the things making education expensive. If re-elected, the Labor government will knock 20% off all student debts, but the cost of courses will stay the same.
Getting a good education is becoming more difficult. Daniel Gillette is studying his second degree and has about $20,000 in student debt.
It means that my choices are more limited. It means that I need to stay in employment that's going to keep me not having enough time to study and those sorts of things.
But he could benefit from an Albanese government promise of a 20% reduction in student debts. The average Australian debt of $27,600 would get just over $5,500 knocked off. And it's part of a $500 million federal package, a carrot for next year's election.
Pretending that they can make it better for me and weaponising my debt in order to try and win my vote, that just doesn't wash with me at all.
The National Union of Students believes it doesn't address the root cause of expensive education. Indexation continues to rise and degrees in arts and humanities shot up in price only a few years ago.
I'm certainly not going to object to it. I'll personally very happy to see 20% of my HECS debt go away. What we need is meaningful change, not something that looks nice and will draw people in.
Advocacy groups also say students should be given greater priority during this cost of living crisis, with those pressures placing huge strain on the younger demographic.
We know that dropout rates from universities are the highest they've been since records began in 2005 at the start of this year.
Rex Quayle, 7 News.
The Ville is preparing for one of its biggest calendar events with more than 500 people expected for Melbourne Cup Day at the Pavilion. Tickets to the event are sold out, but there's also an invitation for people to attend a free after party.
After the event itself, we've got an after party on the lawns. So we've got tents set up, we'll have DJ out there, drinks going on as well. So hopefully it's a beautiful sunny day and everyone can continue on outside.
The DJs will be playing from 3:30 to 6:30 tomorrow night. So you won't be able to make it.
No, sorry, I feel a bit of a sore throat coming on, so if you'd be right tomorrow by yourself.
Oh, you're okay.
Yeah, good stuff. Ahead tonight, Halloween's big boost for Townsville's cat-only vet centre.
And in a first, rare Wedgwood ceramics to go on display in Townsville.
Townsville turns to 7 News to keep up to date on local issues, and we want you to be a part of it. If there's something happening in your street, your suburb, we want to know about it. Send us a message or drop us an email.
And thanks for joining us here on 7. The Coalition has announced a bold plan to end the supermarket duopoly with a strict and costly code of conduct. The bill is set to benefit families and farmers doing it tough, even though the Prime Minister claims the cost of living crunch is almost over.
Bringing Woolies and Coles into line.
We're saying it's a flat $2 million infringement notice if the ACCC sees there's a breach of that code.
The Coalition has proposed a new code of conduct to put an end to supermarket price gouging.
This is about making sure there's a big deterrent, a big stick at one end of it, to make sure that the supermarkets do the right thing.
It would have 3 main parts: a discrete supermarket commissioner,
one that's designated to allow farmers to come forward in a confidential manner to make complaints,
in addition to hefty penalties and leaving decisions in the hands of the ACCC and the courts, not politicians. The code targets cost of living, which Labor says is already under control.
We've got work with the supermarkets to bring down supermarket prices.
It comes after the ACCC announced legal proceedings against Woolies and Coles for misleading customers through discount pricing. The Nationals say Labor's code of conduct won't kick in for another 6 months.
The cost of living crisis is today.
You keep talking about affordability. Have you done anything on fuel? Have you done anything on food?
Tom Duffy, 7 News.
A Halloween house in Bowley Plains had more than 12,000 visitors making a gold coin donation for charity. Spooky enthusiast and homeowner Michelle Benazik donated the proceeds to the Queensland Tropical Cat Clinic this morning.
It means a lot. Every dollar counts. These guys are expensive to feed. and it's not just about food and litter. It's the toys, it's the vaccinations, desexing, microchipping.
I thought what a great opportunity for me to use my Halloween obsession to raise money for a good cause.
Good on you, Michelle. And the clinic rescues and rehomes more than 40 cats a year.
What a great effort. Well, Townsville will soon host the first Australian display of 100 rare pieces of ceramics. The Wedgwood Artists and Industry exhibition will travel to the north from the Victoria and Albert Museum in the UK next year.
This is not your grandmother's china. The premiere exhibition of world-famous Wedgwood ceramics from London is exclusive to Townsville for 2025.
The exhibition is showcasing work straight out of the Victoria and Albert Museum from the United Kingdom, bringing it straight here to North Queensland, further cementing us as the arts and culture capital of Northern Australia.
Some pieces are woven into Australia's colonial history.
The story goes that one of the medallions that we'll actually have in the exhibition, Joseph Banks and the First Fleet was given some clay, which he then gave to Josiah Wedgwood.
The exhibition showcases more than 200 years of ceramic practices.
So we have works from the mid-18th century right through to today. If you look at some of the things that they're doing currently, it's very sexy, very contemporary, working with a lot of contemporary artists.
The collection will be showing at Perth Tucker Regional Gallery from April next year through to August.
We would really be expecting that people in Sydney and Melbourne will flock to Townsville.
Bethany Ross, 7 News.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like having a cup of tea and some fine china.
I don't think we'll be allowed to touch the fine china, though, out of fear of dropping it. Looks good.
All right, well, Nate, let's have a look at what's happening in sport. And it's Australia against Tonga in the footy final.
It is indeed, Joe. And Ruben Cotter, he was full of praise for his teammate Jason Taumalolo in their performance on the weekend against New Zealand and Jack Miller's miraculous Malaysian MotoGP escape. And welcome back for all of tonight's sport. Ruben Cotter has refrained from provoking his Cowboys teammate Jason Taumalolo ahead of the pair clashing in the Pacific Championship final, where Tonga will take on Australia after they beat New Zealand on the weekend. Now, Cotter says Big JT is a player the Kangaroos can't afford to let run riot.
Ruben Cotter was all smiles at training this morning, but there'll be no banter between himself and Tongan cowboy Jason Taumalolo in the lead-up to the final. His club teammate claimed the Aussie aura no longer exists ahead of the Pacific Championships opener.
Leave it to the 80 minutes on the weekend.
Praising rather than provoking Big Jace, a safer bet before facing off.
Yeah, well, he's tough to handle. He's a big boy and he's got good feet as well. So, we saw that in the first game against him. He played pretty well and he played extremely well on the weekend as well.
Taumalolo turned in a vintage performance against the Kiwis. The lock took 20 runs for just shy of 200 metres. 100 of them were post-contact.
We'll expect nothing less this weekend. It'll be a tough game and it'll be one through the middle, I reckon.
Last year's champions New Zealand will now play PNG following back-to-back defeats. The Kumals beat the Cook Islands 42-20 in Port Moresby. North Queensland winger Robert Derby started the host's second-half scoring spree.
Floated over the top. Derby scores in the corner.
What a start to this second half for Papua New Guinea.
Meanwhile, cowboy Jeremiah Nene bagged a consolation try for Samoa against England in the second international of a two-test battle between the nations.
Luai. Oh, clever kick. Good chase from Nene. Great try, Samoa.
The hosts won 34-16 to clean sweep the series. Nathan Ferguson, 7 News.
Townsville's Jack Miller has taken to social media to thank fans for their messages of support after crashing out of the Malaysian GP in a moment that left his team, rivals and spectators holding their breath, waiting for an update on his condition. Thankfully, the 29-year-old somehow walked away from a horror accident on the opening lap with only minor injuries.
Oh no, there's damage further back. Big crash further back. Quattararo has been collected. I think both factory KTMs are down.
Unfortunately, his helmet took the brunt of his heading hit a fellow rider's bike.
As Miller went tumbling down the road, he got his head wedged in between the rear tyre and the rear seat unit of Fabio Quattararo's factory Yamaha.
Miller was initially motionless before being rushed to the on-track medical centre, but fears turned to cheers from a relieved crowd when he returned to the garage relatively unscathed. Lucky man right there, Jack. There were also a few scary moments and bruising falls for Australia's best bull riders at the PBR Grand Final in Townsville. Macaulay Leather took out the event, but the biggest celebrations were for brother Boston, crowned season champion in his rookie year.
One wild weekend was all that stood between Calliope's Boston Leather and the Australia title, and his 11th place finish in the grand final was enough to claim the crown.
I definitely think it'll sink in the next couple of days, and yeah, I'll be jumping for the roof.
And jumping on a plane too, Canada is calling for the 19-year-old whose remarkable rookie season was capped with a $90,000 payday.
Change of bulls will be awesome. Like, I haven't been in the States or anything, so the change of bulls will be very good, and meeting lots of new people, that's good to get my name out there.
His brother Macaulay won the Townsville event to finish second in the title race.
Oh, and champions do what champions do. How about Macaulay Leather?
Oh, unreal. I couldn't ask for a better outcome, to go out, runner up to my little bro. There's no better feeling. He deserves everything, and I'm happy with the way I rode.
Their sibling showdown in 2025 is already a mouth-watering prospect, potentially sparking a rivalry between the Cowboys, who for now are each other's biggest supporters.
From the time he was getting on cars, I knew he'd be something special, and he's a superstar in the making, and I'm super proud of him for it. If he didn't have 4 months off at the start of the year, I guarantee he'd be here doing that interview. He's one ranked person.
Nathan Ferguson, 7 News.
Nothing like a bit of brotherly love there, Joe. What a great way to end the season too.
Fantastic. They're very brave, aren't they?
Yes.
All right, we'll stay with us after the break. Livio joins us with all the weather details.
G'day, Livio Regano with tonight's weather. Full steam into the final month of spring, and it sure is going to be a warm week ahead. Heatwave conditions will gradually creep in from the west, reaching a climax on Friday, and there's a small but ever-present risk of thunderstorms. Here's a sample of today's local temperatures through the Herbert Burdekin. In Townsville, we reached a top of 32 degrees after a low this morning at 21. Ayr got to 31, and Bowen also 31. To the satellite loop, there's not much cloud to talk of affecting at least the populated parts of Queensland, but certainly through the Channel Country you can see this band of storms just encroaching onto Queensland. It's linked to a trough, and over the next day or two it will start spreading east. It's already affecting the Darling Downs, where thunderstorms, especially around the Granite Belt, have been popping up this afternoon. Better chance tomorrow. Let's look at today's chart. There's the trough spread through the Channel Country. Ahead of it you can see the trajectory of the air. It's bringing all this equatorial air down, so it's very, very warm. 40s out over Western Queensland, sometimes up to 42, 43. Tomorrow's chart, that trough moves a little bit closer into southeast Queensland, making for a better chance of potentially severe thunderstorms in the southeast, but just continuing warm in the tropics. Now the latest from the Weather Bureau. Boating forecast for Townsville waters, easterly winds 10 to 15 knots for 3 days in a row. Nice easy forecast and very favourable for a small boat. Seas under a metre. Tomorrow's first low tide is very early, so early in fact that you might sleep through it, in which case the next tide will be a late morning high. For the Herbert and Albertican, a bright sunny day, rather warm though. Townsville 22 up to 32 degrees, Ayr also 32, Ingham 33, Northern Goldfields and Upper Flinders dry with a high fire danger. Charters Towers reaching 37 degrees and Georgetown 40. Looking ahead for Townsville, being on the coast keeps us protected from temperature extremes thanks to a reliable sea breeze. Nonetheless, it'll stay warmer than average with almost no chance of rain. This week's question, why do troughs always seem to form over Western Queensland? On a typical day, the prevailing southeast winds build up pressure against the Great Dividing Range, creating a warp in the isobars known as the coastal ridge. You see it all the time on the daily weather chart. The pressure naturally drops on the sheltered side of the range, creating the opposite effect, a kind of trench in the isobar pattern called the inland trough, which we mark as a dotted line. The trough is most noticeable in summer when it gets really hot and the buoyancy of the air creates even lower pressure, making a further warp in the isobars. Have a nice evening. Now it's back to the team.
Great, thanks for that, Livio, and that's all from us for this Monday. Thanks very much for your company.
And just a reminder, if you'd like to see anything from our news again, you can do that over on 7plus or download the 7 News app. So from everyone here, enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Good night.
Good night.